Hey guys, I'm Keith, the keyboard instructor here at Worship Online. I studied music composition and theory and have been writing and composing music for the last 10 years. In this video, I'm going to be going over some basic harmonic theory concepts and breaking them down piece by piece. We're going to go over stuff like intervals, scales, and key signatures, and then at the end of the video, we'll go over chords. Now, using sheet music and formal music terminology isn't as common nowadays in churches and in worship music, but it's still super important to have a basic understanding of music theory for a couple of reasons. The first is that learning some music theory will help you understand why the music you're playing has the rules that it does, why we can only play certain notes in a scale, or why we can only play certain chords in this song. It'll also help you communicate better with other musicians. Not everyone learns music the same way. Some people play by ear, and some people have learned by reading sheet music, so theory provides a way for the two to communicate together. Now, this isn't going to be a full rundown of everything you need to know about music theory, but it is going to give you a great spot to jump in and start learning. But before we get into that, we also have a second video which is going to cover rhythmic theory, and we're going to break down rhythm piece by piece. So at the bottom of this video, there's a link you can click, submit your email address, and we'll send that video right to you. So before we can start talking about intervals, there's two terms that we got to go over, and they're very simple and you probably hear them every day when you're playing music, and that's sharps and flats. So basically what those are, on a keyboard, if you're starting on any particular note and you sharp it, you're going to raise that note. So on a D, raising it to a D sharp. If you're doing a D and use a flat, you're going to be lowering it from D to D flat. On a guitar, that looks the exact same thing. We have a D, sharping it, raises it, back on D again, a flat, lowers it. So now starting with intervals, I'll go over them first on the keyboard and then I'll show you them on a guitar. The first interval is going to be what we call a half step. So I'm going to be starting on a C. Half step up from C is C sharp. The next interval is going to be a whole step from C. That's going to be a D. A whole step is two half steps. The third interval is going to be a third. Now a third has two variations. The first is three half steps, 1, 2, 3, and this is what we call a minor third. And the second variation is a major third, and that's made up of four half steps. Starting on C, 1, 2, 3, 4. So back again. Half steps, whole steps, minor third, which is three half steps, major third, which is four half steps, and then we'll move on to our fourth. Our fourth, from C to F, is going to be five half steps. And this is very common when building chords. From there, we're going to go to a fifth, which is seven half steps. This is another very common chord in building chords. From there, we'll have a sixth, which is nine half steps. And then we have our seventh, which is 11 half steps. And then our final interval is going to be what we call an octave, which is all 12 half steps and is the same note as your starting note. So here's what that's going to look like on a guitar. Starting on C, a half step is 1 fret. A whole step is 2 frets. A minor third is going to be 3 frets. A major third is 4 frets. A fourth is 5 frets. A fifth is 7 frets. A sixth is 9 frets. A seventh is 11 frets, and an octave is 12 frets. Now, guitarists don't usually play their intervals linear, so stacked it's going to look like this. So there's our half step, there's our whole step, there's our minor third, there's our major third, there's our fourth, there's our fifth, there's our sixth, there's our seventh, and there's our octave. And so all of those intervals are what we're going to use to build scales and chords. So for the second part, we're going to be talking about scales and key signatures. So now that we have a basic understanding of intervals, let's build a regular major scale. So let's pick a starting note, C. So starting on C, scale structures are always built like this for major scales. We're going to start off on a root note, move up a whole step, so it's 2 half steps. Our third note is again going to move up another whole step. Our fourth note is only going to move up a half step. Then from here, we're going to move up another whole step, an additional whole step, an additional whole step, and then one final half step. So starting again, root, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And that's the exact same on a guitar. Starting on a C, whole step to D, whole step to E, half step to F, whole step to G, whole step to A, whole step to B, half step to C. Now on a keyboard, even though the intervals are the same, depending on what key you're in, it'll change when you're playing white or black notes. For example, D major. Instead of playing all white notes like we did in the key of C, we are going to have some black notes and it looks slightly different. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Whereas on a guitar, the format will usually look exactly the same. The exact same hand position as when we were playing the C scale. So now that we have a basic major scale built, the next part is going to be determining which key signature you're playing in. So the easy way to do that, let's say your worship leader says, we're going to be playing in the key of A. How do you know how many sharps you're playing? Or how do you know if you're using sharps or flats? In keys, you're always going to be using the same thing. So if you're in a key that's using sharps, it'll all be sharps. And if you're using flats, it'll all be flats. So there's this really helpful tool called the circle of fifths. And here's what that looks like. So here you can see at the very top, our starting point is a C. Now in the key of C, you have no sharps and no flats. The way the circle of fifths works is as you move clockwise in a fifth, so C to G is a fifth, 7 half steps, you're going to add an additional sharp. So in the key of G, you have 1 sharp. And that sharp is going to start on F sharp. From there, you'll move another fifth from G to D, and you'll have 2 sharps, F sharp and C sharp. This will continue on, another fifth to A, another fifth to E, adding additional sharps each time. Now, when we get to the bottom, you'll notice that we have an F sharp and a G flat. That's because in this key, you can write it or read it in either sharps or flats, depending on which is easier or how the music was written. So going back to the C at the top, if we go backwards and down fifths, so counterclockwise, we're going to add a flat. So moving from C to F, we will have one flat, B flat. Moving from F to B flat, we will have two flats, B flat and E flat. And we'll keep doing that counterclockwise, adding an additional flat each time. So until you memorize all the different keys and all the different sharps and flats that are in each of those keys, the circle of fifths is a great tool to help ease that pressure and just tell you right away, this is the key and these are the sharps and flats you have in that key. I use the tool all the time. So the last part that we're going to talk about now is going to be chords. Now chords is kind of a combination of everything. We're going to be using intervals, we're going to be using the keys that we've been playing in to build chords, which is what we use in all of the music that we play. So I'm going to show you this first on the keyboard, and then I'll show you what it looks like on a guitar. So let's start by just building a regular chord. So chords are going to be built using what we call triads, and that's three notes that are playing at the same time. Now there's two basic kind of chords, major chords and minor chords. Now you probably can recognize them by hearing them. Major chords are fairly uplifting, happy, you could say. Minor chords are more mellow and sad. So the way we make a major chord is by combining two thirds. The first third is going to be a major third. The second third will be a minor third. So starting on C, you'll see we'll have a major third, which is 4 half steps, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then for the top note, we'll have a minor third, 1, 2, 3, only 3 half steps. So C, E is a major third, and E, G is a minor third. Those two together make a major triad. Now if we're going to make a minor triad, all we do is swap those. For the bottom third, we're going to have a minor, and the top will have a major. So here we go, starting on C. This time we'll do the minor third first, only 3 half steps, 1, 2, 3. And then from the E flat, we'll go up 4 half steps for the major third, 1, 2, 3, 4. And there you have it, minor third, major third. And together, they make a minor triad. So here's what that's going to look like on a guitar. Starting with C as our root note. For a major chord, we're going to play the major triad first. And there you have it, the major third between C and E. And then from the E, we're going to go up a minor third to a G. And there we have our major triad. Now, if we're going to play a minor triad, we're going to do that minor third first. So starting on a C, we're going to play an E flat, which is only 3 half steps. And then from the E flat up to the G is a major third, 4 half steps. Minor, major, minor, major. Now in every key that we're playing in, we're going to be having 4 very common chords that are going to be in that key, and then 2 semi-common chords that are used some of the time, but not as frequently. I'll start in the key of C and go through what each of those chords are. So the 4 most common chords in any key are going to be the root chord, which in this case will be C major, F major, G major, and A minor. Now we won't call them by their chord names, we're going to call them by what we call the number system. Each note in a scale has a number, so C is 1, D is 2, E is 3, F is 4, G is 5, A is 6, B is 7, and C is back to 1. So those 4 common chords, instead of C is going to be 1. Instead of F, it's going to be 4. Instead of G, it's going to be 5. And instead of A minor, it's going to be 6 minor. So the 4 chords, 1, 4, 5, and 6 minor. The second 2 chords, which are not as common, are D minor and E minor, which in the number system is 2 minor and 3 minor. So on a guitar, that's going to look like this. We have our C major chord, which is the 1. We have a D minor chord, which is the 2 minor. E minor chord, which is the 3 minor. F major, which is the 4. G major, which is the 5. A minor, which is the 6 minor. And so no matter what key you go into, that structure will always stay the same. So let's say I go into the key of E major. The 4 common chords are going to be 1, 4, 5, 6 minor, with the second chords F sharp minor and G sharp minor, which is the 2 minor and the 3 minor. And then the last thing to go over about chords is the inversions that you're playing in. So everything we just went over is what we call root inversion. That's where the bottom of the chord is the chord note. So for the key of C, a C chord, root position is with the C at the bottom. Inversions are where we change that and have a different root. So here we have the same notes, E, G, and C, but E is at the bottom. This is what we call first inversion, or you can call it C over an E. This is really common when using 2 hands, where you play a C chord in the top hand and the root note that you want it to be in the bottom. So here we have a C over E, root position, C over C. C over E, or first inversion, and then C over G, which is second inversion. All the same chord, just a different inversion. Now it's a little bit different on a guitar, and here's what it looks like. Here's our root inversion with C at the bottom. Now if we wanted to play it in first inversion, we can actually just use the open string. So we let that E ring out, so that's first inversion, or a C over an E. And likewise, if we wanted the G, we can play the 3rd fret on the E string to let the G ring out and have second inversion, or a C over a G. So now let's jump into the second part of the video, where we're going to talk about rhythmic theory and how that applies to all musicians. If you haven't already, go to the link below this video, submit your email address, and we'll send this second video right to you. Here we go.